My name is Jackie Agrari Sabet, and I'd like to welcome you to this program. It's Our Story is One. For those of you who don't know, I want to give just a little brief introduction. This is a story of heroes, of courage, of struggle, of unity, and of the best of human virtue. I want to welcome all of our friends who this may be their first time attending an event here at the Northern Virginia Bahai Center. We're very happy to see you all here, and thank you so much for coming. We're going to go on a journey together. We're going to accompany each other. We're going to weave our stories into one. We're going to speak of an event that happened 41 years ago, and it shaped many lives. That event is the killing of 10 Bahai women in Iran. I want to take you back for a second or a minute, and I want you to look at this from the perspective of a Bahai youth at this time. Some of us were Bahai youth at this time. And what was happening then was youth, particularly Bahai youth that knew of the story, were really coming to terms with how we were going to honor the lives of particularly the young women who died in Iran. We had all kinds of conversations about our lives and our careers and our raising of family and how we were going to make an impact. Well, I particularly had a friend at that time. His name is Chuck. And he's a smooth-talking, very earnest person. And he went off to raise his family in Brazil. And what you're about to see is the impact that this had on his life and how he chose to raise his family actually resulted in one of our performers today. And her name is Jasmine. And my friend Chuck is Jasmine's father. Jasmine currently lives in Spain. She's a wonderful musician. She recently released an album called Amanhecer, which is also sunrise in Portuguese. She's been traveling all throughout Europe on this Our Story is One tour. Again, Jasmine is that tangible impact of this story, and we get to witness that today. Now let's go up to the early 2000s, about 20 years later or 20 years ago. And in Ireland, there was a young professional musician who was introduced to the Bahai faith. And he began applying his talents to promoting Bahai ideals, stories, and prayers through his music. You may recognize this story, that this is our other performer today, and that's Luke Slott. He and his music have accompanied many of us through our morning routines, our evening prayer, and many a car trip, because there's nothing like the remover of difficulties when you get stuck in a traffic jam, especially that saxophone part on his particular way that he presents that beautiful prayer. So what I'm trying to say is that his story is already connected to so many of ours. Well, as an Irishman, he is a master storyteller. And in that vein, I want to finish with you a yarn of my own. And it really illustrates again how connected we all are and how impactful these meetings that we're having today of song and of reflection and prayer, what that really means for us, even as a community. So in 2017, Luke was right here on this stage performing at the Northern Virginia Bahai Center. And at that time, he played on an upright piano. We took the top off and he played on an upright piano. It was completely inappropriate for a musician of his stature to be playing on that. Well, shortly after that, the Bahai Center received that baby grand piano. And it was given specifically for musicians like him to play. That piano actually belonged to my mother. She is of Irish descent herself. And she was very moved and attached to the lives of these 10 women. So what I want to say with all of my introduction is that our story is one. and that we're going to go on this journey that Luke and Jasmine will take us on, and the impact that this meeting will have on our lives as we go forward. So with that, a few just brief housekeeping announcements, which is please do silence your cell phones. So take them out now and silence them. You are very welcome to take pictures and videos. And if you would like to actually put it on social media, just be sure that you put the hashtag #OurStoryIsOne. And the musicians have asked, and performers today have asked, that you hold any applause until the end, because they really want to take you on a complete journey. So the program's about 80 minutes long, and if you could wait until the end to express your gratitude. You may cry, but wait until the end to express your gratitude. Thank you very much.
For such an incredibly warm welcome. And Jackie, thank you for such a beautiful introduction. We were both crying already in there, so we're way ahead of you. But thank you. We are both deeply touched. And before anything, Jasmine and I would just like to express our thanks to the Bahai community here in Northern Virginia, here in Sterling. We'd particularly like to thank the local assembly of the Baha'is here in Sterling for welcoming us at the center to offer this program. This really is such a privilege for us to come here. Every time I've come here over the years, I have felt such a warm welcome, and it's always such a, well, it's a musical treat for us to sing in this beautiful hall. And so really we appreciate being here very much, and we would just like to express our thanks to the whole team for organizing this event. There's a lot of work that goes into preparing something like this, and we're very grateful to the organizers for welcoming us so warmly here. And one thing that Jasmine and I would like to emphasize right from the start is that this concert, and in fact this whole tour that we've been on now for several months, is actually just one small part of a much bigger global campaign, which, as Jackie mentioned, is called Our Story is One, and which was launched just over a year ago on June 18th, 2023, to mark the 40th anniversary of the execution of these 10 women who were executed in one single night in Iran in 1983, simply for the crime of having faith. And this campaign has been launched in their honor. And if you go online and if you look for Our Story is One, if you Google Our Story is One, you'll see this incredible outpouring of artistic tributes to these 10 women. Paintings and poems and songs and films. And this just, it's an extraordinary flourishing of artistic inspiration inspired by these 10 women. In fact, when you see the art that has been created in their honor, they feel very much alive today. And this campaign has two purposes. The first purpose is to honor the memory of these women and to honor the values and principles that they stood for, such as freedom of belief, freedom of conscience, equality of men and women. But there is also a second purpose to this campaign, and that is to express solidarity with and support for people in Iran today, particularly women in Iran, who continue today to struggle and strive for basic freedoms and human rights. People have sometimes asked us, why are an Irish musician and a Brazilian musician traveling around the world singing songs about people in Iran? And one very important reason is that over the past few years, Jasmine and I have become aware that our fellow artists and musicians in Iran do not have the same freedoms that we have. The freedom to write songs and travel around singing songs about things that are important to us. You may have heard of Iranian musicians, like, for example, Shervin Hajipour, a young singer-songwriter who was arrested for writing a song. You may have heard of Tumaj Salehi, another Iranian musician who just recently has been sentenced to death for giving his voice to the women's movement in Iran. And we really feel for our fellow musicians in Iran and for all people in Iran who do not have, whose voices are so often silenced and shut down. And we feel compelled to use our voices to highlight the voices of those people. And so we'd like to begin with a song on the theme of hope, hope for a better future. You know, these people in Iran, young and old, are struggling and striving because they believe in a vision of a better future, not only for their own country, but for the whole world. And you know, sometimes when we look at the world and we see so many problems, so many wars and injustices and corruption, sometimes it's easy to lose hope in humanity. And I think it takes a certain kind of courage to hold on to a vision of hope for a better future. And I think that these 10 women are a remarkable example of holding on to a vision of a better future, even if sometimes the world looks like a hopeless, barren wasteland. I made you a promise, and I don't want to break it, but you know I found it hard to believe that we had what it takes. And though I may be wrong in all my speculations, I can still recall the pain when we stood with our souls stark naked. You made me a promise, and it's not like you to fake it, but you know I found it hard to conceive the time it would take. You may prove me wrong with all your new creations. Yeah, I can still recall your face when you told me one day we'll make it. And this wasteland will blossom like heaven, and all the colors we've painted here will merge into one, and there will be no religion as we know it today. No more endless division, just love, hope, and faith in the wasteland, in the wasteland, in the wasteland. I saw you down at the landfill with the photographs you sold, and you loved them like a child, though your face was getting old. And though all we have is a dust heap, we'll make it beautiful yet. And when the breeze of spring comes back, this cold winter we'll forget. And this wasteland will blossom like heaven, and all the colors we've painted here will as one. No more senseless collision. When these fickle wars are done, no, there will be no division of sex, color, class, or creed. Just one world to belong to, and one color blood to bleed in the wasteland, in the wasteland, in the wasteland. Thank you. So, what Jasmine and I would like to suggest is that rather than thinking of this program as a concert, I wonder if we could think of it more as a kind of a musical journey that we're going to take together. And what we hope is that this journey, this experience, will give us all a little moment to just step away from all our day-to-day tasks and to-do lists and phones and responsibilities, and actually just have a moment to reflect on what is really important in life, in our lives, what is really important in the world, and what is most important for the future of the world. And so this journey that we're going to take is going to consist of a mix of songs and stories and some poetry and some memories. And what we're going to do is we're going to gradually journey our way towards the story of these 10 women. But from the outset, it's very important to understand that these 10 women were executed for their beliefs in the context of an extremely rich heritage, a beautiful heritage of freedom of belief in their homeland. And so, with that in mind, as a point of departure for our journey, I wanted to tell you a little bit about a peculiar ancient treasure that I once saw on display in the British Museum in London. And if you ever go to the British Museum in London, you will see this ancient treasure on display there. It's, in fact, one of the most significant artifacts preserved from the ancient world. It's a large cylindrical stone tablet. It's about this big, known as the Cyrus cylinder. And on this stone tablet, there is an inscription engraved into the stone all around it. And this inscription has been described historically as the world's first charter of human rights. And it was created by an Iranian whose name was Cyrus, Cyrus the Great, or as Iranians know him in their own language, Kourosh. Kourosh, Cyrus the Great, was the founder of the ancient Persian Empire, the precursor to what we know today as Iran. And to this day, Cyrus the Great is widely regarded by people of many different nations and different cultures as one of the most noble kings who ever lived, because of the fact that he created an empire that was explicitly built on the principle of freedom of belief and the protection of individual rights. So long before the Geneva Conventions and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights after the Second World War, an ancient Iranian king proclaimed across his empire the world's first charter of human rights. And this charter protected the rights of all people under the rule of Cyrus to practice their own religion in safety, to express their beliefs, and to preserve their own cultures and their own languages. And the heritage of Cyrus the Great has been described as a heritage of human understanding, a heritage of tolerance, of courage, of compassion, and above all, of human liberty. So a very beautiful, admirable heritage, not only for the people of Iran, but for the world. What an example. And actually, I have something I would like to show you. I have here a miniature replica of the Cyrus cylinder. And I thought that we could pass this around the room, and as we continue our journey, you can feel free to pass this on, and I'll give it to Jasmine to she can pass it down. And feel free to take a look at it. It's just a souvenir from the museum, so don't worry about it. But it can make its way around the room, and I'll pick it up later after the program. But it's just so you have a sense of what this ancient treasure looks like. Well, by the 1970s, over 2,500 years had passed since Cyrus had founded his empire. And Persia, or Iran as we know it today, had gone through a dramatic history of highs and lows, of ups and downs, that would just make the world's most extreme roller coaster feel like a walk in the park. This was a history of great dynasties rising up and crashing to the ground, of religions being born, of peoples conquering other peoples. And this extraordinarily rich heritage of art and literature, poetry, science, medicine, philosophy had blossomed out of Iran. And that heritage actually continues to exert a profound influence on the wider world today. In fact, sometimes it's so profound we don't even notice that it's there. Just a couple of years ago, I read an article that said that the number one best-selling author here in the United States is in fact the English translations of an Iranian poet. His name is Rumi. Well, also by the 1970s, the people of Iran had watched as many of their leaders throughout history had, to one degree or another, drifted away from the example of Cyrus the Great, sometimes into periods of corruption, and sometimes even into moments of tyranny. And so in 1978 and 1979, certain groups of people in Iran rose up in a revolution to overthrow the Shah, the king of Iran. But the ultimate result of this revolution was not what most Iranian people really wanted, because when the Shah finally accepted defeat, there appeared in Iran a power vacuum like never before. And this power vacuum was swiftly and ruthlessly filled by extremist fanatics who claimed that they possessed divine authority to rule over the people. And among these new leaders, it seemed as if the very memory of their ancestor Cyrus had simply vanished from their minds, from their pulpits. They proclaimed that the mere notion of human rights was a Western concept, incompatible with their society. And so from 1979 onwards, the people of Iran suddenly found themselves deprived of so much of the freedom and the progress that they had made. Artists, musicians like ourselves, writers, journalists, teachers, scholars, even students were arrested en masse, often tortured and thrown behind bars. Women, as a group comprising half the population of the country, suddenly found themselves under extreme restriction and systematic oppression. And there's a very poignant short poem by the Iranian poet Halu about this strange reversal of fortunes that happened to the people of Iran in 1979. And I'd like to ask Mia to come to the stage and share with us this short poem called February 1979.
February 1979. Amidst the chaos of the revolution, a prisoner wrote on the wall in Evin prison, "People, be aware. Very soon the Ayatollahs will topple the monarchy and prisons will turn into universities." Many years passed and I kept asking myself, what about all those nice promises? When is it going to come true? Then I landed in prison and I saw with my own eyes students and scholars everywhere. That's how the prisons turned into universities.
Thank you, Mia. So Jasmine and I would like to dedicate this next song to all those heroes in Iran today who have not forgotten their ancestor Cyrus and who continue, often at great danger to their own lives, to stand up and defend human rights in their country. This song is dedicated to the great Iranian lawyer Nasrin Sotoudeh, to the Nobel Peace Prize winning defender of human rights Shirin Ebadi, and also to Narges Mohammadi, who you may have heard just last year was also awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for her work defending human rights and particularly women's rights in Iran, and who actually remains in prison today. And this is for all those unknown heroes in Iran who have stood up for justice and equality and fairness in their homeland and spend their days behind bars. This is called In the Shade of Paradise. There is a prison cell in old Tehran, and within a woman there, a child grows strong. There is a prison of poems unknown in old Shiraz, and from its invisible floors of stone, a warning rose. When the towers in the sky fall and the river changes course and the powers up on high give in to the call, you will hear the people cry. Where did all the lovers run to? When did all the heroes die? Well, didn't you look behind these walls? They live on a plain of sacrifice. There is a rose garden in Esfahan, and in it the nightingales sing their midnight song. When the towers in the sky fall and the ocean pulls its tide, and the powers up on high give in to the call, you will hear the people sigh. Where did all the lovers run to? When did all the heroes die? Well, didn't you look behind these walls? They live on a plain of sacrifice. What did all the mothers come to? Where do all the sisters hide? Well, didn't you look behind these veils? They live in a sea of tearful eyes. Where did all the lovers run to? When did all the heroes die? Well, didn't you look behind these walls? They live in the shade of paradise. 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 There is a prison cell in old Tehran. And so, in 1979, the people of Iran entered a new chapter of their history. And today, some 45 years later, this chapter is widely regarded by many Iranians as one of the darkest chapters in the history of their homeland. Apart from targeting artists and musicians, poets, journalists, educators, intellectuals, women. The new leaders in Iran immediately began clamping down on the country's religious minorities, Iranian Christians and Jews, Zoroastrians, Muslims who disagreed with the new government were all targeted and harassed, often being made the objects of brutal atrocities at the hands of their own government. But among all these groups that were targeted, there was one group towards which the new leaders became particularly vicious. And this was, in fact, Iran's largest religious minority, the Bahai community. And I'm not going to explain in detail what the Bahai community is or what the Bahai faith is. That's not the reason for this program. If you have questions about that, you're probably in one of the best places in the country to ask. But I just wanted to share with you that there is a short saying by Baha'u'llah, who was the founder of the Bahai faith and who was himself an Iranian. And he said that it is better to be killed than to kill. It is better to be killed than to kill. And I think this short saying speaks volumes about the way in which the Bahai community in Iran has responded to the cruelty that it has received from its government. Because from 1979 onwards, as the new government gained more and more power, Baha'is all over Iran were arrested solely on the basis of the personal beliefs that they held in their hearts. Many were tortured, imprisoned, their family homes were confiscated or sometimes simply set on fire. Even their sacred places and cemeteries were demolished and desecrated by government forces. New laws were enacted to officially dismiss Baha'is from their jobs and to expel their children from schools and universities all over the country. But despite this cruelty that the Baha'is in Iran have received, their response has been noted on an international level for its unique character. And in fact, the response of the Baha'is in Iran to this religious persecution has been so unusual in the history of religious persecution that it has actually been studied by academics, by sociologists, by government institutions all over the world. And it has been given a special name called constructive resilience. And I love this phrase, constructive resilience. It speaks of a kind of a deep inner strength and empowerment and a focus on building something good, even in the face of great adversity and cruelty. This constructive resilience. It's such an empowering little pair of words. And one example of this constructive resilience is the way in which the Baha'is in Iran have responded to the denial of their right to education. And it's actually a beautiful story. This was the subject of a documentary film that was made several years ago by the Iranian journalist Maziar Bahari. Now, Maziar Bahari is not a Baha'i. He's a journalist. He was in prison in Iran for his journalism. And when he got out of prison, he wanted to tell this interesting story about how the Baha'is have approached education in a situation of extreme adversity. And he created a whole campaign called Education is Not a Crime to highlight this issue. And it's actually a beautiful, inspiring story. It goes something like this, that after the revolution of 1979, as more and more Baha'is around Iran were fired from their jobs and were expelled from schools, the young people in that community were growing up without any prospect of a future, without any hope of ever having a career or of developing their talents or of any sort of intellectual flourishing. There was such a stranglehold on this community that these young people had no hope of fulfilling their dreams of becoming a doctor or a nurse or an engineer or an architect or an artist or a musician or a teacher or anything. And so in response to this situation, certain teachers and professors, many of whom had actually lost their own jobs, began to offer secret university-level classes in the family homes of these young people. And these teachers would smuggle school textbooks into these homes, and they would sit with these young people. They would sit around the kitchen table with them, and they would deliver to them university-level courses in economics and engineering and medicine and music and the sciences and anything you can imagine. And these young people fully understood that at the end of all these studies, they would sit no official exam, they would gain no qualification, and they would get no job. They understood this, and yet they kept on coming back to these classes simply for the love of learning, the love of knowledge and understanding and the enrichment of the human mind and the human spirit. And these classes started popping up in family homes all over Iran. And this secret network of teachers and students became, for all intents and purposes, a kind of underground university, spread throughout the country, fully functioning as a university does, and yet completely invisible to the authorities. And it became known as the BIHE, the Bahai Institute of Higher Education. Well, after some years of this, the authorities finally found out about the BIHE, and they immediately launched a systematic campaign to destroy it. Family homes were raided, teachers were thrown in prison, even textbooks were confiscated, and every effort was made to shut down the BIHE. But you know, by the time that the Iranian authorities found out about it, it was too late, because so had the rest of the world. And the BIHE was being recognized in the international academic world for its outstanding levels of higher education. And as of today, there are over 110 universities all over the world, here in North America, in Europe, in Australia, which have granted scholarships to students from the BIHE and have brought them to their campuses to further their studies and develop their careers. And Jasmine and I have had the great privilege on our travels of meeting students from the BIHE in different countries who began their studies in secrecy in Iran and who are now living beautiful, flourishing lives and contributing, using their talents to contribute to the countries in which they now live. And so Jasmine and I would like to dedicate this next song to the teachers and the students of the Bahai Institute of Higher Education for their truly remarkable example of constructive resilience. So this song is really intended to be a kind of a reminder that for all the destruction and the noise that we witness in the world today, there are also wonderful, constructive things taking place. Sometimes they're hidden, they're quiet, they're invisible, but they're there, building and building and building, as if they're hidden behind a veil. Come down and walk these roads around the city of Tehran, where 7 candles burn. For the zest of charity down to the crimson sea. 100,000 veils have covered the sun, and darkest clouds have blocked and blackened the blue sky. Did you hear the fate of those who educate, who even in the grave find no respite from hate? Have you seen the youth who gave their lives for truth? That girl who kissed the noose and welcomed all abuse. 100,000 sons have fallen to earth with blasts that block the ears from hearing the new song. 100,000 veils have covered the truth. How many mothers' cries are lost in the tumult? There is no war to fight. You have no sacred right, no holy book to cite to make these wrongs seem right. Does it so offend to want this world to mend, to walk in hope to the end, and see each man a friend? Come down and walk these roads around the cities of Iran, which boast so much to man. So, I'm sure that many of you are, no doubt, aware of the woman life freedom movement, which erupted into the global spotlight just a little less than 2 years ago, after the death of a young woman in Iran, a 22-year-old woman named Jina Mahsa Amini, who died while she was being held in police custody after she had been arrested and really violently assaulted by the authorities simply for wearing her headscarf incorrectly. And Jina Mahsa Amini's death sparked this nationwide movement, which very quickly became a global movement led by women and supported by men and children too, all over the world. And it became known as Woman Life Freedom, Zan Zendagi Azadi. And this movement has really highlighted the situation of the deprivation of women's freedom in Iran and in other countries too. and it has highlighted this as an extremely important issue to address in our modern world. And this movement of woman, life, freedom actually continues today in various forms, both in Iran and around the world, of people striving to raise awareness and bring about change, bring about freedom and dignity and autonomy for women. Well, what's so interesting about this movement in Iran is that this cause for women's freedom in Iran actually stretches further back into Iranian history than many people today realize. And these women who today are striving and fighting for basic freedoms, basic human rights, such as the freedom to personally choose how we dress. These women who are fighting for these freedoms actually have in their own Iranian heritage a remarkable predecessor, an extraordinary Iranian woman who lived in the 19th century and whose name was Tahereh, which means the pure one, Tahereh, the pure one. And Tahereh was a phenomenon of 19th century Iran. She was a gifted poet and writer. She was an extremely powerful public speaker. She was an accomplished scholar, highly educated as a philosopher, as a theologian. And she was also, in fact, one of the leading figures in the very early days of the Bahai faith in Iran. And today, this woman, Tahereh, is regarded by many people around the world, both women and men, those who know about her. She is regarded as one of the greatest women in human history. And she is looked to as an example of courage and of commitment to the cause for women's freedom and dignity and autonomy. And so I've written a song in tribute to this woman, Tahereh, and I'd like to share this song with you. But before we get to the song, I'd like to tell you a little story about Tahereh. And hopefully by the time we get to the song, we'll all feel like we know her a little better. So for this part of the story, we need to travel back in time a little bit. So I'd like to invite you all to use your imaginations. You can close your eyes if you wish. We're going to use our imaginations, and in our mind's eye, we're going to travel back in time. We're going to travel exactly 176 years back in time to the year 1848. And if you look up 1848, you'll find that it was a very peculiar year in the history books, because 1848 was a year that witnessed this unprecedented, cascading sequence of social movements that rippled across large parts of the world, largely across Europe and Latin America, these revolutionary movements of people in different countries suddenly rising up and calling out for change, calling out for justice and fairness and equality in their societies. And this year went down in history as the springtime of the people, 1848. Well, in the summer of that springtime of the people, as all these revolutionary movements were sweeping across the world, a quieter yet equally historic and world-changing event took place in a garden in a little corner of the Iranian countryside. This was a gathering of less than 100 people who had come together to consult on the implications of the new teachings of the Bahai faith. And at this gathering, an incident occurred which shook Iranian society to its core. And in some ways, I sometimes think that Iran has still not recovered from this incident that took place in 1848. And at the center of that incident was this woman, known as Tahare. Now, just to give you a sense of how serious this incident was, it's important to understand that Tahare, as was the custom of her time and place, and just like every other woman in society around her, had lived her day-to-day life with a veil completely covering her face in public at all times. And this was a custom of her time and place. And in fact, it was a custom that was so deeply woven into the fabric of her society that the mere notion of ever seeing a woman's face in public was just unthinkable. It seems a little strange in this part of the world, but in that part of the world at that time, this was so normal that it probably didn't even occur to people that you would ever see a woman's face in public. Well, at this gathering, in this garden, in the summer of 1848, Tahare, like a bolt of lightning striking at the very root of Iranian society, appeared before the people with her face unveiled. And this act of defiance to the social norms of her time and the expectations of women of her time was so incomprehensibly scandalous, so horrifying to the people around her, that they felt as if they felt a wave of panic ripple through the gathering. It was as if they were witnessing the very fabric of their society unraveling before their faces. And there is actually an eyewitness account of this incident, which I'd like to invite Sina to share with us now. This was written by a man who was present at that gathering and wrote down his description of the events. Thank you, Sina.
Suddenly, the figure of Tahireh, adorned and unveiled, appeared before the eyes of the assembled companions. Consternation immediately seized the entire gathering. All stood aghast before this sudden and most unexpected apparition. To behold her face unveiled was to them inconceivable. Even to gaze at her shadow was a thing which they deemed improper. Quietly, silently, and with the utmost dignity, Tahireh stepped forward. Her unruffled serenity sharply contrasted with the affrighted countenances of those who were gazing upon her face. Fear, anger, and bewilderment stared the depths of their souls. "This is the day of festivity and universal rejoicing," she announced. "The day on which the fetters of the past are burst asunder. I am the blast of the trumpet. I am the call of the bugle."
Thank you, Sina. So, Tahireh was like a comet that just blazed across the skies of 19th century Iranian society, 170 some years ago, and in many ways set an example of courage for the women in Iran who continue her legacy and continue to strive for freedom. In fact, it's reported that in response to one of the many death threats that she received in her life, Tahireh once famously proclaimed, "You can kill me as soon as you like, but you cannot stop the emancipation of women." Well, this comet blazed so brightly that eventually the authorities of her time caught up with her. And in the year 1852, Tahireh was captured and arrested by a group of military officers who strangled her to death and then threw her body down a well and covered it with stones and rubble, hoping that she would be forgotten forever. But she was not forgotten. And I'd like to now share this song written in her honor. And as I play the opening chords of this song, I'd like to ask Mia to share with us a few words of tribute to Tahereh, written by a man of her time.
Account of a life which her contemporaries have failed inadequately to recognize. May future historians perceive the full measure of her influence and record the unique services this great woman has rendered to her land and its people. May the followers of the faith which she served so well strive to follow her example, recount her deeds, collect her writings, unfold the secret of her talents, and establish her for all time in the memory and affections of the peoples and kindreds of the earth.
Close all your books and enter this school. I'll show you the secret of a new golden rule. Lay down your letters and run to the field. Your sword in this battle is the tongue that you wield. Oh, Tahereh, Tahereh, you were the eye that saw far away, far away. You took my breath and my heart away on the day when the heavens did roar and the earth cried out for more. You were the moon in the cold winter sky, the rays of your mind, the solace of my eye. And you were the blast to raise up the dead, the sound of your voice ever ringing in my head. Oh, Tahereh, Tahereh, you were the eye that saw far away, far away. You tore the veil from my heart away on the day when the oceans did boil and the sun kissed the soil. Chase every demon, expose every lie. Welcome the day of a great sober sigh. Put on your dress for the wedding once more, and cast me a smile as you pass through the door. Oh, Tahereh, Tahereh, you are the wing for this broken, lost bird, the one lonely letter that makes well the word. So Godspeed the day when your trumpet blast will be heard, and lo, the dead will rise. The ones who sowed this veil of lies will fall away before your face. Tahereh, Tahereh, where do you lie? Beneath stones and rubble, or in the glistening of my eye. Tahare, Tahare, where do you lie? Are you not the object of every man's sigh? So at this point in our journey, I would like to direct our attention and our hearts towards these 10 remarkable women who are being specially remembered over this past year through this campaign, and who have inspired this extraordinary outpouring of creative, artistic tributes. And I would just like to take a brief moment to introduce each of them by name. First is Ezzat, who was the eldest of the 10. She's pictured here with her family. Nusrat, pictured here with her son Bahram. Tahare, named after the great Tahare of the 19th century. Tahare was a nurse, and she's pictured here on her wedding day with her husband Jamshid, who also lost his life under the same circumstances. Zareen. Zareen was a student of English literature and an extremely gifted poet and writer. Mahshid. Mahshid had been a student of physics and also a linguist. She was a polyglot. And she worked both as a scientist and as a translator. Akhtar was also a nurse like Tahare. Shaheen, who was known as Shireen Dalvand. Shireen, in her college days, she had written a paper on the treatment of drug addiction for people in Iran after the trauma of the 1979 revolution. And her paper was so insightful that it was actually used by teachers in teaching their classes. And that paper that eventually made its way all the way to England, where it was recognized for its brilliance and was eventually published by Sheffield University after her death. Simin worked in agriculture in Iran, but like so many others, she had lost her job after the revolution. Roya had been studying to become a vet, but also, like many of her fellow Bahai students, she had been expelled from university. And finally, Mona. Mona was the youngest of the 10. She was just a high school student. And these 10 women were people like us. They were living their lives, looking forward to their futures, dreaming their dreams. We all have our dreams. Most of them were just in their 20s at the time of their execution. As I mentioned, several of them had been college students. Several were nurses who worked very devotedly, caring for sick and injured people in hospitals in Iran. One of them was a mother in her 40s. That's Nusrat, on the bottom in the middle. Another was a mother in her 50s. That's Ezzat, on the bottom left. And another was Ezzat's own 23-year-old daughter. That's Roya, on the top left. Mother and daughter together. And throughout 1982 and 1983, each of these 10 women were arrested, and they were charged by their government with a long list of crimes. One of their crimes was teaching children's classes, something like Sunday school, where children in a neighborhood will get together and learn stories and say prayers together and sing songs and play games and learn about things like treating people fairly and being kind and being honest, like character qualities. And these children's classes are just a normal activity that Baha'i communities all over the world do. And these classes are offered as a service to society for children of all backgrounds to come together and have a nurturing, safe, wholesome environment where they can grow. We have these children's classes back home in Ireland. Jasmine has them back in Brazil. I'm sure you probably have them here in Virginia. They're everywhere, in neighborhoods all over the world. And they're offered on a totally voluntary basis. But in Iran, teaching these classes for children was a crime. The younger women in this group were also charged with the crime of simply being unmarried. This too was considered by the Iranian government as a punishable crime for a woman. All 10 of them were accused of being spies, sent by foreign powers to infiltrate Iran and to destroy their own country. And the list gets more and more preposterous as you read it. But at the top of this list was the greatest crime of which they were guilty. And that was the crime of simply believing in the Baha'i faith. a faith whose stated goal is to build a peaceful, united world based on the principle of the oneness of humanity. And for this crime, for this belief, without any access to legal representation or without any proper trial procedure, these 10 women were imprisoned for months on end, sometimes being subjected to periods of solitary confinement and even physical torture. At times, these women were chained face down on wooden tables and were whipped on their backs and on the soles of their feet, sometimes 100 lashings at a time with a wire cable. And throughout all these months of abuse, these women were repeatedly asked to renounce their personal beliefs. Again and again, they were asked and asked and asked, and again, all 10 women refused and refused and refused. And eventually, on June 18th, 1983, the orders came down from the authorities to bring their imprisonment to an end. And I'd like to ask Sina to share with us some eyewitness accounts of that day 41 years ago.
It was late afternoon on 18 June when the prison visit was over. Shortly afterwards, the guards called the 10 women and ordered them to board a bus. They were Mona, Roya and her mother Izzat, Shirin, Zahrin, Mahshid, Simin, Akhtar, Tahire, and Nusrat. The bus driver who transferred them from Abbottabad to the execution site was greatly affected by the bravery and strength of the women, and he recalled that moment as follows. I thought they were going to be released until we came up to the gate for the security check. That was where we found out that the ladies were going to be executed. All the way they were chanting, they were all cheerful and proud. Another witness was one of the executioners who put the rope around their necks. He told the mother of one of the girls, "We gave them the opportunity to recant up to the last minute. First, we hanged the older women, and then it was the turn of the young girls, one by one in front of the rest. The youngest was last. We thought they would be so frightened that they would recant. We said to them, just say once that you are not a Bahai and we will let you go. But none of them did.
So for the next song, Jasmine and I would like to sing for you a short verse from the writings of Baha'u'llah. And we've just taken this verse and set it to music. And, you know, this is a relatively well-known verse from the writings of Baha'u'llah. And I have no doubt that these women would have known this verse, probably by heart. And I can imagine that these few words would have been a source of great comfort and inner strength and fortitude for them. This verse the song is called The Sign of Love, and it goes, for everything there is a sign. The sign of love is fortitude under my decree and patience under my trials. And so, before Jasmine and I sing this song, I would like to ask Mia to share with us some memories from some of the members of these women's families about when they received the news of June 18th.
From Zarin's mother. They let me go into the morgue. I never thought I would be able to carry on living after that moment. What I saw in that room and what I went through that day are indescribable. When I went in, oh my God, I saw 10 angels sleeping motionless next to each other. I knew all of them. I had been in the same prison with them. There were mother and daughter, Izzat and Roya, lying there. What strength kept me breathing and on my feet, I don't know. I visited all 10 angels. I found Zarin, embraced her cold body, and put my cheek against her delicate and cold face. I kissed the mark of the rope on her beloved neck on behalf of all of her family. Her face looked natural and tranquil. From Mona's sister. The pain I felt that day was the same as when I heard the news of my father's martyrdom. I thought I would go mad. The prospect was so painful that psychologically I refused to accept it. Instead, I imagined the day when she would return home. Her footsteps, her laughter, her lovely voice. I imagined embracing and kissing my beautiful sister. I wanted to share the pain of our father's martyrdom with her, and I needed to talk to her about the painful days when they were all in prison. I wanted her to share with me the sufferings she had gone through. I had plans for us to be together and support our mother. So many thoughts rushed through my head in the moment when I heard the tragic news of the martyrdoms. I hoped that someone would come in and say it wasn't true. I was still kneeling beside Mona. It was a bitter experience seeing my sister for the last time without a glass partition to separate us. I kissed her cold cheek and said goodbye to her. With all my heart, I wished she would open her eyes and let me see her smile one last time. But I knew she was observing us from above with an eternal smile, and one teardrop would break her heart. Thus, my beautiful Mona, I smile for the love you had for Baha'u'llah and humankind. May the world discover why you sacrificed your life.
O Son of Man, for everything there is a sign, the sign of love is fortitude.
The sign of love is patience.
The sign of love is fortitude.
The sign of love is patience.
Under my decree,
Under my trial,
under my decree,
under my trials,
O Son of
O
Man,
Son of Man,
for everything,
for everything
there is a sign,
there is a sign.
the sign
is patience.
The sign of love is fortitude.
The sign of love is patience.
Under my decree,
Under my trial,
under my decree,
under my trial,
under my decree,
under my trial,
under my decree,
under my trial.
Some of you may have noticed in one of the earlier songs, Jasmine and I sang a line that referred to a girl. We sang a line in one of the verses that went, "That girl who kissed the noose." Well, that girl was Mona Mahmoud-Nejad. I mentioned earlier she was the youngest of the 10. She was just 17 years old when she was hanged for her faith. And I think you can get an impression from these photographs that Mona was a vibrant, joyful, happy, creative, lovely girl who loved life and played guitar and liked dancing and goofing around, and who obviously loved her family. Here she is with her father. Mona was a very devoted teacher of these children's classes I mentioned earlier. Outside of school and her homework, she would dedicate a lot of her spare time to giving these classes, these neighborhood classes for children, spending time with them, singing with them, teaching them about, things like being honest and sharing and being fair. And she knew, even at 17 years old, she knew that the future of humanity lies in nurturing and educating our children. Even as a 17-year-old girl, she recognized this, and she was absolutely committed to being there for the younger generations. Even when this became dangerous, she remained committed to giving these children's classes. And over this past year, during this Our Story is One campaign, as Jasmine and I have been learning about the story of these 10 women, we have just been just knocked off our feet by the courage and the extraordinary inner, deep spiritual strength of these women. But the courage of 17-year-old Mona is really something truly remarkable, because on the night of their execution, when the 10 women were brought from their prison cell to the public square of their city, Shiraz, to be hanged, one after another, in a single night, 17-year-old Mona insisted on going last, because she knew how painful it would be for her 9 friends to have to stand and watch a 17-year-old girl be killed. And she wanted to spare them the trauma of having to watch that. And she wanted to stand and be a support to her friends in their final moments. But, you know, the maturity of this decision, the profound maturity of this decision is almost hard to comprehend. It's almost kind of otherworldly, because this decision of Mona not only meant that she herself had to stand and watch as her 9 friends were hanged one after the other before her eyes, but it also meant that when her turn came, she had no one left to stand and support her. She had no one to look into her eyes one last time with love, or to just whisper a word of support to her. She had to go to the executioner completely alone. And when the executioner put the rope around her neck, Mona stood up tall, and she raised her head high, and she kissed the noose. And I'd like to ask Sina to share with us a memory from Mona's mother about one of the last conversations they ever had.
She looked into my eyes and said, "Mama, I know I will be killed. I just want to tell you what I'm planning to do. And if you don't tell me now, you will lose this chance forever, and then you will be sorry that you didn't let me talk. Now, do you want me to tell you or not?" Haltingly, I agreed. "Okay, tell me." Mona held my elbow and started to walk. "You know, Mama, the place where they're going to hang us is probably going to be higher than the ground, so they can put the rope around our necks. I will first get permission to kiss the hands of whoever puts the rope around my neck. You know, Mama, I think they will definitely let me do that. I will then explain that we Baha'is are not allowed to kiss anyone's hand except the hands of our executioners. That hand must be kissed because it will speed up our journey towards our beloved. Then I will kiss the rope I am to be hanged with. Then I will ask for their permission again and say this prayer." As she was standing in front of me, she closed her eyes, crossed her hands on her chest, and in a very spiritual manner, like a lover singing a song for her beloved, she chanted a prayer. Then she opened her eyes and said, "And then I will pray for the true happiness of all mankind. And I will say goodbye to this mortal life and leave, to go to my adored one." I looked at her, but I couldn't see her. I heard her, but I couldn't comprehend what she was saying. On the one hand, my emotional attachment to her was frightening me. On the other hand, she had taken me to a beautiful spiritual world. 10 days later, she was killed.
So ever since I heard this story, I've always been struck by this final act of Mona's life. What did this mean? Why did she kiss the noose? And I wonder if perhaps in that moment, the noose represented her sacrifice. It represented everything that she was willing to give her life for. It represented everything that she was unwilling to compromise on. It represented her commitment to her faith, to her principles, it represented her commitment to loving humanity and loving God no matter what. And just like her ancestor Cyrus, Kurosh, it represented her unbreakable dedication to freedom of belief for all people. And so this next song is inspired by the final moments of Mona Mahmoudnejad's life. And the lyrics of this song are actually written from the point of view of the noose. And in this song, I'm imagining that night of June 18th, 1983, when the 10 women are brought from their prison cell, they're put on this bus, and they're taken to the public square. And the executioner is there. Perhaps there are some authorities present to oversee the event. And I imagine that of all the people who are present in this scene, the only being who can actually see the truth of these women, the only being who can see their goodness, their character, their inner beauty, is this little piece of rope, this noose. And seeing them, the noose falls in love with these women and considers it the greatest privilege to be so close to these 10 courageous souls at this moment. And it becomes a love song. And the noose sings to these women saying, "You told me that love is queen and freedom is life. And I held you so close to me. And I longed for nothing more than to die with you." So this song is called "To Die With You." And at the end of this song, you'll notice Jasmine and I are going to sing the names of the 10 women. I'll sing each name, and Jasmine will echo each name. And if at any point you feel moved in your heart to join Jasmine in her echoes of their names, if you want to just express that from your heart, either quietly to yourself or out loud, as loudly as you wish, feel free to join us in paying tribute to these 10 remarkable women. So this is called "To Die With You," and it's dedicated to Roya, Mahshid, Mona, Shireen, Zareen, Ezzat, Simin, Nusrat, Tahir, and Akhtar. I was there when the heavens bowed their heads and the earth stood forth with her eyes awash with red. I touched your hair in a moment out of time. How could I ask for more? How could I dare demand a sign? I saw you there on the coldest prison mile. How did you stay so fair? How did you find the grace to smile? I kissed your hair while the moon was cleft in two. I had no need for prayer. Every thread of my soul was tied to you. We danced in 1,000 worlds neath the brilliant blue sky, and the rays of the sun paled before the gleam in your eye. You told me that love is queen and that freedom is life, and I held you so close to me, and I longed for nothing more than to die with you. I was there when 1,000,000 trumpets blew, all but the dead could hear. All the rivers of life returned to you. I touched your lips in a moment of despair. Your breath was a rose-scented breeze through the dead desert air. We danced in 1,000 worlds neath the brilliant blue sky. All the wealth of the world was dust before the gleam in your eye. You told me that love is queen and that freedom is life. Then you whispered so close to me, and I longed for nothing. We danced in 1,000 worlds neath a star-sprinkled sky, and the face of the moon paled before the light in your eye. You told me that love is queen and that freedom is life, and you came so close to me, and I longed for nothing more than to die with you. Die with you. Mona Zari Roya Shirin Tahire Mahshid Nusrat Izzat Akhtar Simin Mona Zari Roya Shirin Nusrat Izzat Akhtar Simin Mona Zari Roya Shirin Tahire Mahshid Nusrat Izzat Akhtar Simin Simin. So this now brings us to the end of our musical journey. And Jasmine and I were thinking about what we could take away from this journey when we step out the door this afternoon, we go back out into our lives. What will we take with us? And so we wanted to offer you something to bring with you after this journey. And so something that I think is very important to remember about this story is that outwardly, this is a tragic story. It is a story of 10 innocent women whose lives and futures were stolen from them under completely unjust circumstances. But inwardly, underneath the surface, this is a story of extraordinary courage and profound inner strength. And I think it's a story that we can actually all draw courage from, and we can draw strength from this story and from these women in our own lives. And so these women have inspired me and Jasmine greatly, not just in our music, but in our lives. And so what we thought we would offer you is a question to take with you. And it's just a private question for you to think about in your own time, and I'm sure everyone will have their own unique responses to this question. But we hope it gives you some food for thought. So the question is, what do these 10 women inspire me to do? What do these 10 women inspire me to do in my life, in my family, in my community, in the world? You know, these were women who really believed in this. They really profoundly believed our story is one. And they were living out that belief in their lives. They were striving to build relationships with others based on the oneness of humanity and the equality of men and women. They were dedicating their lives to peace building and to promoting understanding between people of different perspectives and walks of life. I mentioned to you Mona and others were teachers of these children's classes who were dedicating their time to nurturing the future generations of humanity. Because these women they had a vision of hope in their hearts that was so powerful to them, a vision of a better future for humanity that was so powerful to them that they refused to give up on that vision, even at the cost of their own lives. And you know, the truth was that even though they accepted what was happening to them with an incredible grace and courage, these women wanted to live their lives. They wanted to live and contribute to improving the world and being of service to humanity. This was their longing. This was what they wanted. And they're not in this world anymore, but we're all here, and we can continue to do what they were doing. And in fact, people already are, because for the last 41 years, these women have inspired people all over the world to orient their lives towards serving humanity and making the world a better place. And so, with that in mind, I'd like to finish our program with one short final song on the theme of hope and on the theme of universal human solidarity. And I'd like to sing this song in the Irish style with no guitar, just voice. And this song is really about, in my view, the essence of making the world a better place, and that is learning to wish each other well, no matter who we are or where we come from. And it's called Song for My Brother. Oh, brother, well, I wish you on your journey homeward. Oh, may you treasure every step along the way. So I will see you where the river meets the ocean, underneath the shelter of the greatest name. Oh, may your heart and soul ascend unto the kingdom. Peace be upon you and upon your family. And may the gentle winds of heaven's revelation breathe upon you breezes of eternity. Oh, sister, we are but the drops of one great ocean. Oh, we are leaves upon the branches of one tree. One heart between us, and between us only one soul, to sing aloud the sweetest songs of unity. Thank you so much. Thank you to our wonderful readers, Sina and Mia. Thank you. Thank you all so much. It has been such a privilege. You're so generous. Please be comfortable. It has been such a privilege to share this program with you. And Jasmine and I would just like to thank you all for being here today and spending your Sunday afternoon with us, because, as I mentioned, these women and this story have inspired both of us greatly in our own lives. And I think it's always a great privilege to have a space where we can share the things that have inspired us. And we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for giving us that privilege. Thank you very much.
May the world discover why you sacrificed your life. Right? That's what Mia read to us from Mona's sister. So today we discovered, and today we experienced, and today we were impacted. Going forward, our story is now part of this story. On your behalfs, I want to thank the organizers of this program. And that would be the sponsoring Bahai community of Fairfax Northwest, the fantastic Bahai Center committees and volunteers who bring us these programs. It's their work and planning that allows us to even have this experience. And of course, to Luke Slott and to Jasmine Howard, all our love and gratitude to you. Mona prayed for the true happiness of all mankind, and you helped us make us aware of that. I know you all want to continue this connection, and a few ways to do that is there is a QR code that's out there that'll allow you to continue your connection online. You can certainly support Luke's work, in particular to help others make this connection. If you want other people to be able to experience this, we feel so strongly in our Baha'i community about the power of the arts to move the soul. And supporting people like Jasmine and like Luke is our true honor. Of course, if you've got some social media, please do hashtag Our Story Is One. And then finally, I really encourage you all to continue Our Story Is One and connect with each other out in the lobby. We now have a chance to have a little reception and socialization, smile at each other, hug each other. We've experienced something really beautiful together. And thank you again to the two of you.